the hidden psychological weapon, the silent way to shake a narcissist's world. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes from dealing with a narcissist, the kind that doesn't just drain your energy, but makes you question your sanity. You could be discussing something as harmless as what to eat for dinner or as serious as a legal agreement, and still they will resist. Psychologists describe this pattern as reactance, a deep-seated psychological need to defy control. To a narcissist, agreement feels like submission. Even if the issue benefits them, the mere fact that it originated from you is enough to provoke resistance. Their instinctive defiance isn't always rational. It's about power, about maintaining a sense of dominance in a world where compromise feels like defeat. This is why even the simplest suggestion can become a battlefield. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, one of the foremost experts on narcissistic behavior, explains that this opposition stems from their fragile ego. The narcissist's self-worth depends on the illusion of control, and when they sense that someone else might be influencing their choices, their brain perceives it as a threat. In such moments, their prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and empathy, takes a backseat while the limbic system, the seat of primal defense, lights up in alarm. They react not with reasoning, but with combat. Gaslighting, denial, deflection, or even outright rage. They are not fighting you. They are fighting the terror of feeling powerless. And yet, for those caught in their orbit, the experience feels deeply personal, like being punished for trying to make peace. But what if you could shift this dynamic not through confrontation, but through subtle psychological leverage? What if, instead of fighting their need for control, you allowed them to believe they still had it, even as you quietly guided the outcome? Psychologists who study influence and persuasion often speak of a technique called microconsistency conditioning, which is similar to what sales experts and behavioral strategists call stacking micro-yes. This method harnesses a universal principle of human psychology. Once someone commits to a small yes, their subconscious desires to remain consistent with that choice. Even narcissists, who are famously resistant to influence, are subject to this cognitive bias. Imagine beginning with something so small, so neutral, that it feels impossible to refuse. Something like, "You received my email on Thursday, right?" It's factual, non-threatening, and doesn't invite debate. This initial yes is your first opening. Dr. Robert Cialdini, the psychologist behind influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, describes this as creating psychological momentum. Once people say yes to something small, their brain prefers to keep saying yes, because doing otherwise would create internal tension, what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. By stacking these small agreements one by one, you bypass the narcissist's defensive walls. Each micro-yes builds a rhythm of compliance, conditioning their mind toward a state of psychological consistency. It's not manipulation in the malicious sense, it's psychological aikido, using their own mental energy to redirect resistance into cooperation. Instead of exhausting yourself in endless arguments, you guide them toward the outcome as though it were their own idea. For the victim or survivor, this strategy doesn't just create practical results. It restores a sense of control long stripped away by emotional chaos. When you learn to navigate a narcissist's mind through understanding rather than confrontation, you reclaim your power. Psychologists emphasize that such empowerment is not about dominating the narcissist, but about protecting your peace. It's about stepping out of the reactive dance and learning to influence the dynamic without being consumed by it. So, the next time a narcissist twists your words, denies the obvious, or picks a fight over something meaningless, remember, their resistance is not about logic, it's about control. And control, when understood through the lens of psychology, can be redirected. With the micro-yes strategy, you're no longer trying to outshout them, you're leading them quietly, step by step, toward the very outcome they swore they'd never agree to, all while believing it was their idea. Imagine you're holding the wheel of a massive ship in a storm. The narcissist is the tempest, loud, erratic, unpredictable. But you're not fighting against the wind. You're steering through it, slowly, intentionally. This is what psychologists call strategic redirection. A calm, deliberate shift of power that doesn't rely on confrontation, but on influence. The goal isn't to overpower the narcissist, because direct confrontation only feeds their need for control, but to subtly guide their focus and behavior until the current flows in your direction. As Dr. George Simon, author of In Sheep's Clothing, explains, you don't win against manipulation through aggression. You win through awareness, composure, and precision. Once you've gained that first micro-yes, you're ready for the next phase, the layering of logic. This is where you begin building your quiet fortress, brick by brick. Each yes becomes a brick in a psychological wall the narcissist can't easily climb. And you saw the attached statement in that email, right? You saw both accounts there, yes? That tiny and is powerful, it links agreement to agreement, each one reinforcing the next. It's not magic, it's cognitive architecture. Psychologists describe this as cognitive momentum. When a person says yes once, their subconscious feels compelled to remain consistent. Even narcissists, whose entire identity revolves around being right, feel the invisible pull of their earlier answers. You're not fighting their ego anymore, you're quietly weaving logic around it. This is the part where many people stumble, they leap too quickly into demands. But with narcissists, the moment you push, their ego's alarm goes off. Their mind interprets your request as a loss of control, and instantly the primitive defense systems kick in: denial, gaslighting, deflection. That's why, instead of pushing, you lead. You move from agreement to agreement like a dance where they believe they're leading, when in fact you're the one guiding the rhythm. And when the final ask arrives, perfect, then you'll be sending your updated numbers by tomorrow. It feels less like a command and more like a natural conclusion to what's already been agreed upon. They comply not out of submission, but because their own logic now binds them. Psychologists refer to this as conditioning through congruence. The narcissist's need to appear consistent becomes your ally. You're no longer begging for cooperation, you're shaping it. Instead of confrontation, you're using cognitive alignment, the science of aligning their behavior with their self-image. In this space, logic triumphs over chaos. They still believe they're steering the ship, but every turn is one you've anticipated. The illusion of control keeps their ego pacified, while your calm authority shapes the outcome. Consider this in real-life contexts: a co-parenting negotiation, a workplace conflict, or a divorce proceeding. You say, "You were at the pickup last week at 4 p.m., right? And we agreed on the same time this week, right? Perfect, see you then." No emotion, no bait, just structure, predictability, and confidence. According to family psychologist Dr. Lindsay Gibson, this approach works because it neutralizes emotional volatility and forces engagement with facts rather than feelings. When you communicate in this steady, logical tone, you deprive the narcissist of what they crave most: emotional chaos. They can't feed on your anger if you don't serve it. This technique isn't manipulation, it's self-protection through psychological literacy. It draws from principles of neuro-linguistic programming and behavioral conditioning, teaching you to communicate in ways that bypass defensiveness and restore balance. It's persuasion without deception, structure without aggression. In essence, you're rewriting the emotional script of every interaction. When you argue, you fuel their ego. When you stay calm and strategic, you starve it. You win not by fighting harder, but by refusing to play their game. What makes this strategy so effective is that it rests on three well-documented psychological principles. First, commitment and consistency. People naturally want their actions to align with their words. Second, momentum bias. Once a pattern begins, the brain prefers to maintain it rather than disrupt it. And third, the illusion of control. Narcissists must believe they're steering the interaction, even when the direction has already been quietly set by you. When these three forces intertwine, you gain influence without confrontation. And the beauty of it? You can start applying it today. In every text, in every meeting, in every negotiation, each micro-yes becomes a step toward your peace and autonomy. Every subtle redirection reclaims a piece of your power that the narcissist once fed upon. Over time, this isn't just a strategy, it becomes healing. Because as you learn to guide the storm instead of fighting it, you begin to realize something profound. You were never powerless. You were simply learning how to steer.